Be me, my name is Lisa. I'm 32. It's Friday night, I think. The days kinda blur together when you have nothing to look forward to. I'm sitting on my couch, the one with the weird stain on the cushion that I keep meaning to clean. The TV is on, but the volume is off. Just flickering lights to make the apartment feel less empty. My cat is staring at me from the armrest. He does that a lot. Judging me, probably. I pick up my phone for the 10th time in the last hour. Open Instagram, scroll. There's a picture of Sarah. We were inseparable in our early 20s. She's at some kind of pumpkin patch with her husband and 2 little kids, all wearing matching flannel shirts. She looks happy. Genuinely happy. Not the kind of fake happy you post for likes. She looks tired, but in a good way. Fulfilled. I keep scrolling. Another old friend, Jessica. She just posted an ultrasound photo. It's a boy. Her husband commented underneath with a bunch of blue heart emojis. I remember when Jessica used to be the life of the party. Now she's talking about nursery paint colors. I feel a familiar knot tighten in my stomach. It's not jealousy exactly. It's something colder, a feeling of being left behind at the station while everyone else's train departed on time. I close the app. The silence rushes back in, louder than before. It wasn't supposed to be like this. 10 years ago, I had it all figured out. I was going to be different. I was going to be better. I remember sitting in a campus coffee shop with Sarah and Jessica and the rest of our group. We were 22. The world was ours. We talked a big game about our careers, about not settling for some boring suburban life. We had this whole philosophy. We weren't going to let ourselves be trapped by mediocre men. We had standards. We weren't just looking for a boyfriend. We were looking for a partner who could match our ambition, our energy. Most guys just didn't make the cut. They were background characters in the movie of our lives. I think about Ralph. It happened around that time, maybe a year before we graduated. He was in one of my classes. He was quiet, always sat near the back, but he was smart. Not flashy smart, just solid. He was nice, predictable. He wore plain shirts and jeans. His hair was always neatly combed. He was the definition of what my friends and I called a safe choice. The kind of guy you settle for, not the kind you dream about. One afternoon, I was walking across the main lawn. He sort of appeared out of nowhere, looking super nervous. He said my name, and I stopped, barely recognizing him at first. He told me he thought I was really interesting, and that he admired how I wasn't afraid to speak my mind in class. Then he asked me if I wanted to get coffee sometime. Just coffee. I remember looking at him, just looking, at his sensible shoes, his hopeful, nervous eyes. All I could think was, is this it? Is this the best I can attract? It felt like an insult. I didn't say that out loud, of course. I was more clever than that. I gave him a little smile, the kind that doesn't reach your eyes. I told him that was really sweet, but I was focused on my future right now, that I was aiming for something bigger. I said I didn't have time for distractions. The way his face fell, it wasn't dramatic, just a quiet deflation. The light just went out of his eyes. He mumbled something like, "Oh, okay, I get it, no problem." And then he just walked away. Later that day, I told my friends about it. I reenacted the whole thing, imitating his nervous voice. They howled with laughter. We called him Safe Bet Ralph for the rest of the semester. It felt good. It felt like I had power, like I was the gatekeeper of my own destiny, and I was turning away the unworthy. Ralph was the opposite of everything I thought I wanted. What I wanted was Steven. Steven was not a safe bet. He was a risk. He was exciting. He was the lead singer in a local band that was popular for about 15 minutes. He had tattoos, a motorcycle, and that kind of effortless confidence that made you feel like you were lucky just to be in his orbit. He didn't ask you to coffee. He texted you at 11 p.m. telling you to come out, and I would, every time. Being with Steven was like a performance. We'd go to the coolest bars, the most exclusive parties. People would look at us. They'd look at me. I was the girl on the arm of the most interesting man in the room. That was the validation I craved. It was proof that I wasn't mediocre. Our conversations were never deep. We talked about his music, his ambitions, his problems. He never asked about my job or my day. I didn't mind. I thought it was part of his mystique. I told myself that dynamic, creative men were just built differently. He never called me his girlfriend. We were just hanging out. My friends loved him. They thought he was so cool. They lived vicariously through my stories about him. I was with him for maybe 6 or 7 months. It's hard to say because it wasn't a real relationship with anniversaries or milestones. The end came quietly. I remember we were lying in his bed one morning, which was rare. Usually I was gone before the sun came up. I felt a surge of confidence. Things felt good, stable even. I rolled over and asked him where he saw this going, the look on his face. It was pure, unfiltered confusion. Like I had just asked him to explain quantum physics in another language. He just said, "What do you mean? We're having fun, aren't we?" I tried to press the issue. I mentioned the word commitment. It was like I had pulled a pin on a grenade. The whole atmosphere in the room changed. He got cold, distant. He said he had to go to band practice. His texts became less frequent after that. Then they stopped altogether. I saw him a few weeks later at a bar with another girl, a younger girl. He saw me, gave me a little nod, and turned back to her. Like I was a former coworker he barely remembered. It hurt. A lot more than I ever admitted to anyone. But I told myself it was his loss. He was intimidated by a strong woman. He couldn't handle someone on his level. That's what my friends and I told each other. It was our mantra. We blamed it on toxic masculinity. Men were just too fragile to handle women like us. But then, things started to change. Sarah was the first to go. She met a guy at her accounting firm, an IT guy. He was quiet, wore glasses, and loved to build computers in his spare time. By our standards, he was painfully boring. We teased her about it endlessly, but she seemed happy, calm. A year later, they were engaged. We threw her a bachelorette party and made cynical jokes about the ball and chain. She just smiled and said, "We didn't get it." Then Jessica met someone, an old high school friend she reconnected with on Facebook. He was a contractor, owned his own small business. He wasn't a rock star or a CEO. He was just a regular guy who treated her well. One by one, my friends started peeling off. They were getting married, buying houses in the suburbs, having babies. Our group chats went from planning nights out to sharing pictures of engagement rings and nursery furniture. I felt like they were betraying our pact. They were giving up, settling. I told myself I was the only one holding true to our values. I was still out there, living my exciting, independent life. But my exciting life was starting to feel repetitive. My career didn't take off like I thought it would. I bounced between a few different admin jobs, nothing that felt important or fulfilling. The job I have now, working as a barista, was supposed to be a temporary thing while I figured it out. I've been here for 3 years. The cool bars and parties weren't fun anymore. I was getting older, but the guys there seemed to stay the same age. Going out alone started to feel less liberating and more sad. So, like everyone else, I turned to the apps. My God, the apps. When I was 25, being on a dating app was like being the queen of the ball. My inbox was flooded. I had my pick of dates any night of the week. I was selective, arrogant even. I'd ignore dozens of messages from perfectly nice guys because their opening line wasn't clever enough, or I didn't like their shirt in one of their photos. Now, at 32, it's a different world. It's a barren wasteland. My profile is good. I have recent photos. I look nice. I put effort into my bio, made it sound witty and smart. The silence is deafening. The men my age, the ones who are successful and have their lives together, they're not looking for a 32-year-old. Their age range is set to 22, 28. It's written right there in their profiles. No drama, looking for something real, ready to settle down. They're not swiping right on me. I'm invisible to them. The guys who do swipe on me, it's a horror show. Men in their late 40s who are recently divorced and want to have fun again. Their pictures are blurry selfies taken from a low angle in their car. Guys my age who clearly haven't gotten their act together. Living in their parents' basement, talking about their SoundCloud in their bio. I went on a few dates. They were awful. One guy spent the entire time complaining about his ex-wife. Another guy showed up in sweatpants and seemed surprised that I expected him to pay for my coffee. A third one confessed halfway through dinner that he was actually married, but in an open thing. Each date felt like a little piece of my soul was being chipped away. I would come home, pour a glass of wine, and stare at the ceiling, wondering where I went wrong. My standards, which once felt so empowering, now felt like the bars of a cage I had built for myself. I tried lowering them. I really did. I gave guys a chance who I would have instantly dismissed a few years ago. It didn't matter. There was no chemistry, no connection. Or worse, I'd think a date went well, feel a tiny spark of hope, and then get ghosted. Just complete and utter silence. The digital equivalent of being left standing alone in a crowded room. It's a special kind of humiliation. Last month, I had a conversation with my mom on the phone. She was trying to be helpful in her own way. She asked if I was putting myself out there. I told her I was trying, but it was hard. She said, "Honey, you're a wonderful girl, but you're not getting any younger. The good men are all getting snatched up." I know she meant well, but it felt like a knife twisting in my gut. I got off the phone and cried for an hour, because I knew she was right. I had spent my 20s rejecting the good men because I thought I deserved something exceptional. I chased the excitement, the validation, the guys like Steven, and now the guys like Ralph, the ones who were stable and kind and ready for a real partnership. They were gone. They were married to women like Sarah. They were building lives, families. They were happy. And I was here, alone in my apartment with my cat and a gallery of other people's perfect lives on my phone. The bitterness is a constant companion now. I see happy couples walking down the street holding hands, and I feel this ugly surge of resentment. Why them? Why not me? What do they have that I don't? And the answer is always there, lurking in the back of my mind. They chose differently. They didn't think a quiet life was a consolation prize. They saw it for what it was, a victory. A few weeks ago, I was at my breaking point. Another Friday night spent alone. I'd swiped through every dating app until it said there was no one new in my area. The feeling of desperation was overwhelming. I felt like a failure. I thought about all the feminist articles I used to read, the quotes I'd share about how a woman doesn't need a man to be complete. It all felt like a lie, a beautiful, empowering lie that I had bought into completely. Maybe you don't need a man, but I was starting to realize I wanted one. I didn't want a partner in crime to travel the world with anymore. I just wanted someone to sit on the couch with and watch a movie, someone to talk to about my day, someone to be there. But how do you find that when the modern world of dating feels so broken? The thought came to me suddenly, an idea so old-fashioned it felt radical. What if I just tried to meet someone in real life? No apps, no swiping, just an old-school, organic connection. People used to do it all the time. How hard could it be? The question was, where? Bars felt wrong, too loud, too transactional. I was done with that scene. Coffee shops, maybe, but everyone is always on their laptop with headphones in. The "do not disturb" sign is practically glowing above their heads. Then I thought about it. The one place everyone has to go. The great equalizer, the supermarket. It sounded perfect in my head. It's a low-pressure environment. You can see what people buy, get a little glimpse into their lives. You could run into a nice, normal guy in the produce aisle. A guy who has his life together enough to be buying kale and organic chicken on a weeknight. A guy who isn't just looking for a hookup. The idea took root in my mind and started to grow. It became a plan, a mission. This would be my final stand. I decided to go on Friday after work. Peak hours, the best time to maximize my chances. I would put in the effort. I wouldn't just show up in sweatpants. I would make myself approachable. I would smile. This was it. This was how I would turn things around. A new hope started to bubble up inside me, pushing down the cynicism for the first time in a long, long time. I was going to the supermarket to find a husband. It sounds crazy when I think about it now, but at the time, it felt like the most logical thing in the world. It felt like my only option left. So, the day came. Friday. I got home from work, and instead of collapsing on the couch, I went straight to my closet. It felt like preparing for a first date. More than that, it felt like preparing for an audition. I pulled out a dress I hadn't worn in years. It was a nice one, simple dark green, fitted but not tight. I wanted to look classy, approachable, the kind of woman a man would feel comfortable talking to. I didn't want to look like I was trying too hard, but I absolutely was. I spent a full hour on my makeup, not the heavy going-out makeup I used to wear, but something softer, natural. I wanted to look pretty, but effortlessly so. The irony was not lost on me. As I was getting ready, I practiced conversations in my head. I'd stand by the cheese selection, look thoughtfully, and then turn to a handsome stranger and ask for a recommendation. He would be charmed by my question. He'd have a witty answer. We'd start talking, and it would just flow. It all seemed so plausible in the safety of my bathroom mirror. I looked at myself one last time before leaving. My hair was done. My makeup was perfect. My dress was flattering. I looked like a woman who had her life together. I tried to project an aura of calm confidence, but underneath, my heart was hammering against my ribs. I grabbed a reusable shopping bag and a small list I had written out. Avocados, salmon, wine. It felt like a prop list for a play. I walked out of my apartment and into the cool evening air. This was it. Game time. The supermarket was bright, painfully bright. It was busy, just as I'd hoped. The aisles were filled with people winding down from the week, stocking up for the weekend. There were couples, families, and plenty of single men. My target demographic. I took a deep breath and grabbed a shopping cart. It felt like a shield. For the first 10 minutes, I just walked around, getting my bearings, trying to look like a normal shopper. I mentally scouted the territory. The produce section seemed promising. It felt wholesome, healthy. I saw a guy who fit the bill, maybe 35, wearing a nice casual jacket. He looked like he probably had a good job. He was scrolling through his phone with one hand and inspecting a bell pepper with the other. Okay, Lisa, you can do this. I pushed my cart over and parked it a few feet away. I pretended to be intensely interested in the avocados, picking them up and putting them down. I waited for him to finish with his phone. He didn't. I took another breath. "Excuse me," I said, my voice a little shakier than I wanted. He looked up, but not really at me, more in my general direction. His eyes were blank. "I'm terrible at this," I said, with a little laugh that sounded fake even to my own ears. "Do you know how to tell if an avocado is ripe?" This was my moment, the perfect innocuous opening. He glanced from his phone to the pile of avocados, then back to his phone. "Just squeeze it gently," he said, his voice flat, completely devoid of interest. "If it gives a little, it's ready." Then he turned and walked away, his thumb already back to scrolling. He didn't smile, he didn't make eye contact. I was dismissed, a minor, momentary obstacle in his path. I stood there for a moment, my hand hovering over the avocados. A hot flush of embarrassment crept up my neck. Okay, that was just one guy. He was probably busy, stressed from work. I couldn't let it throw me off my game, shake it off. I put 2 random avocados in my cart and moved on. My next stop was the wine aisle. The wine aisle felt more sophisticated, a place for lingering, for contemplation. I saw another potential candidate. He was tall, dressed nicely, and was genuinely studying the different bottles of red wine. No phone in sight. This was a good sign. I positioned myself nearby, pretending to read the labels on some white wines. After a minute, I made my move. "It's overwhelming, isn't it?" I said, trying to sound friendly and conspiratorial. He looked over at me. He had nice eyes. "I'm supposed to be bringing a bottle to a dinner party, and I have no idea what to get." I gave him what I hoped was a charming, helpless smile. He offered a small, polite smile in return. "What's for dinner?" he asked. His tone was civil, but distant, like a store employee who was required to help. "I think she said chicken," I replied, my hope flickering back to life. "Can't go wrong with a Sauvignon Blanc or a Chardonnay then," he said, gesturing vaguely at the bottles in front of me. "Any particular one you'd recommend?" I pushed, trying to keep the conversation going. He pointed to a mid-range bottle. "This one's usually pretty good." And then came the death blow. He reached into his pocket, pulled out a single AirPod, and placed it in his ear. He gave me a final brief nod and turned back to the red wines, his body language screaming, "Conversation over." I was stunned. He had literally tuned me out. I felt my smile freeze on my face. I grabbed the bottle he pointed to without even looking at it and practically fled the aisle. The cart felt heavier now. The bright lights of the store felt like interrogation lamps. Every happy couple I saw felt like a personal attack. My confidence was shattered. What was I doing? This was insane. I was a 32-year-old woman trying to pick up men next to the frozen peas. The whole plan felt pathetic, humiliating. I had thought I was the prize. For years I had operated under the assumption that I was a catch, and it was the man's job to win me over. Now, here I was performing for an audience that wasn't even watching. I abandoned my list. I just wanted to get out of there. I steered my cart towards the checkout lanes, keeping my eyes fixed on the floor. I chose the longest line, just to prolong the misery, I guess. In front of me was another man. He was alone. about my age, maybe a little older. He looked normal, not a model, just a regular guy. He had a basket filled with normal things: milk, bread, eggs, a six-pack of beer. This was my last chance. I wasn't going to talk to him. I had lost the will for that. But I thought maybe if I just caught his eye, if we shared a small smile of mutual frustration about the long line, maybe that could be enough. A tiny spark. I focused on the back of his head, trying to will him to turn around. After a minute, he shifted his weight and glanced behind him. Our eyes met for a fraction of a second. I gave him a small, hopeful smile. He gave me nothing back. Not a smile, not a frown. Just a blank, neutral look. His eyes scanned over me as if I was a piece of scenery, and then he turned back around to face the front. I didn't exist. In that moment, something inside me just broke. It was the cumulative weight of all the rejections, the left swipes, the unanswered messages, the ghosting, and now this quiet, polite, soul-crushing indifference. The men weren't being hostile. They weren't being rude. They just weren't interested. The game had changed, and nobody had sent me the new rulebook. Or maybe I had just been disqualified for taking too long to play. I felt my eyes start to sting with tears. I blinked them back fiercely. I was not going to cry in the middle of a supermarket. The line moved forward. I was numb. I just wanted to go home. As I was unloading my 3 pathetic items onto the conveyor belt, I heard a child's laugh from the next aisle over, a happy, carefree sound. I glanced over without thinking, and then I saw him. It was Ralph. My brain took a second to process it. It was like seeing a character from an old movie walk into the room. He looked older, of course. We all did. But he looked good. He looked content. He wasn't wearing anything special, just a comfortable sweater and jeans. The same kind of simple clothes he used to wear. He was pushing a shopping cart. Beside him walked a woman, his wife, I assumed. She was pretty, in a natural, girl-next-door kind of way. She was laughing at something he had said, and in the child seat of the cart there was a little girl, maybe 2 or 3 years old. She had a little pink bow in her hair. They looked like a commercial, the perfect happy family. They were moving slowly down the aisle, talking about what to get for dinner. My heart stopped. I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. It was like watching a life I could have had play out in front of me. As they got closer, Ralph looked up. His eyes swept across the checkout area, and for a single, terrible second, they landed on me. There was a flicker of recognition. I saw it. It was the faint, distant spark you get when you see a background actor from a TV show you watched years ago. A face you know you've seen before, but you can't place it, and it doesn't matter anyway. There was no anger in his eyes, no look at me now triumph, no pity. There was nothing. I was a ghost from a past he had long since forgotten. A footnote in a chapter he never reread. He turned back to his wife, said something that made her smile, and they continued on their way. He never looked back. In that moment, standing there under the fluorescent lights, the full weight of my choices came crashing down on me. All those years of feeling superior, all those men I dismissed as boring or not good enough. All that time I spent chasing a fantasy with guys like Steven, who saw me as disposable. I had traded the solid, dependable foundation of a man like Ralph for the thrill of a roller coaster that was always destined to crash. I had mocked the very things I now so desperately craved: stability, kindness, partnership. I paid for my 3 items at the self-checkout machine. My hands were shaking. Avocados, salmon, wine, a dinner for one. I walked out of the automatic doors, leaving the warm, bright world of the store behind. The parking lot was dark and cold. I sat in my car for a long time, the engine off, just staring into the darkness. The bag of groceries sat on the passenger seat next to me. The silence in the car was absolute. It wasn't supposed to be like this, but it was, and it was a life of my own making.